Hello, all you cool cats and kittens. Sorry. And if you understood that, means you also watch Tiger King like most of the world right now. I hope you're all doing well. I hope everything's going all right for you in this crazy time. Um, Today we're going to discuss chapter 15, Design as a Profession, and this is going to kind of retread some of the same ground we've gone over before, but a little more in depth, okay? So we've mentioned this before. Designers, what do? They make the functional, the everyday, more aesthetic. And we've discussed that. We know what that means, right? It means that designers take something that we use every day, like perhaps our notebook for class or our pencils or whatever, and they make it something more aesthetic. And we tend to buy things like that suit our personalities, right? So that really comes from the arts and crafts movement in a lot of ways. And the arts and crafts movement is particularly important to preserving creativity and handmade following the industrial revolution and things being made mechanically. So during the first half of the 19th century, mass production became the norm in Britain. Because items were now mass produced, the aesthetic quality of these products declined greatly. William Morris, poet and artist, dedicated himself to renewing British design. Morris felt that mass manufacturing both alienated workers from their labor and also that the quality of the items being made was quite poor. And guys, this really isn't very different than what we deal with now, right? I know this is different for everybody, and some people, aren't going to feel this way, but a lot of us, if we've worked, retail or these kind of jobs, we might feel disconnected from the product that we're actually selling. Now, some people don't. Some people, might disagree with that, but I think a lot of us, if we have worked in that sort of job. It's not the same, let's say, as a chef running their own restaurant to work at Burger King, where the menu is not prepared by you. You're not the one making the choices of the flavor palette and things like that. So you become disconnected from these mass manufacturing decisions and don't feel that maybe you have a lot of power of creation, right? You ever had somebody where you're working and they say, "Well, I'm never coming back," because you left out their fries or whatever, and a lot of us have been in that kind of situation and been like, okay, um, because you don't feel that super connected to what you're making, right? And also with the quality being quite poor, well, that's something we still deal with, right? It's much more expensive to buy a sweater that somebody has actually hand knitted than it is to buy one that's mass manufactured, but the quality is better. So this is what we're kind of getting into here. So Morris's company, Morris & Co., was dedicated to creating pieces of value, stained glass, painted tiles, furniture, tapestries, etc. So they wanted to preserve, the arts and crafts movement wanted to preserve handmade in a time of manufacturing. All right. So Art Nouveau, an international decorative arts movement. So these lamps, these Tiffany lamps, were actually a catalyst for this movement. So created by Louis Comfort Tiffany, son of the founder of famous Tiffany and Company, which you guys might have heard of Tiffany and Company. It's the beautiful jewelry with come in the little powder blue boxes. These beautiful lamps inspired Siegfried Bing to create the Art Nouveau movement. Not only were the lamps new, the mode of lighting was relatively new as well, as Edison had only demonstrated electric light bulbs in Paris, Bing's home, in 1889. The new electric lighting combined with the beautiful stained glass of the lamps enriched living spaces in a bold new way. So, of course, now we think of this as kind of an old fashioned design, correct? But at the time, it was probably somewhat comforting to have this stained glass, this handmade, when electric light bulbs were kind of the new, innovative, thing going on. So, characteristics of Art Nouveau: organic subject matter like vines, leaves, snakes, flowing lines such as those of a woman's hair, ornamental. Um, so, just all about the aesthetics, right? All about beauty, flowing lines, organic subject matter, of course, like we've talked about in class, is really very different than, like geometric is very boxy and stiff, and organic is more flowing, imperfect, things like that. So I'm not going to actually play these videos while I'm doing this recording, to keep it very real with you guys, partly because there's not even enough space probably on my computer to do that. Um, so I would just recommend you watch these videos. The slides are on Blackboard. You don't have to, but you definitely can if you'd like. They will help, inform you about what Art Nouveau is about, and there's a few videos in here. And if for some reason there are slides that are or PowerPoints that are missing slides on Blackboard, just let me know. Every once in a while, there's one I've forgotten to update in a certain class or something, and I can update that. All right, so the Modernist era. Art Deco, up-to-date modern at that time. Materials like chrome, steel, and plastic sought to give expression to the everyday, reflected the changing landscape of America. Skyscrapers were coming up, right? So reflected or influenced by 1920s Cubism, and so favored geometric shapes over flowing lines of Art Nouveau. So we've got the geometric versus organic. Even the curves of the female body went out of fashion with the popularity of Art Deco, as did flowing hair. Everything was modern, boxy, geometric, the new. They wanted new. They wanted this new era. They were embracing the manufacturing and that very modern look. And we kind of relate Art Deco to New York City, don't we? A little bit, because it's one of the hubs of like the future, and certainly was at that time. So when I say even the curves of the female body, when you look at like Art Nouveau, you're looking at more like Rubenesque, mermaid-like shapes and figures. And with Art Deco, the style was to be, and you guys have seen this probably in movies and like Gatsby, right? Just to be very thin. The hair was to be very cropped and kind of that geometric cropped hair, as opposed to long and flowing hair. Um, so everything was meant to be geometric, and everything was meant to be new and kind of industrial looking. So here are some examples of Art Deco, and you can see the boxiness and the lines and the boxy cuts of the clothing and the more cropped hair. De Stijl. So as we've discussed, every art movement gives rise to a responsive movement. Many thought that those obsessed with arts and crafts were living in the past, and so enter an even more geometric and simplified style in De Stijl. De Stijl, Dutch for the style, also took its cues from Picasso and simplified real-world elements into their most geometric forms and colors. So simplified was their vocabulary of art that they only employed primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, plus black and white. So what exactly are we saying here? So the arts and crafts movement, you could kind of compare it to, kind of the style I have in my house is just kind of a granny's living room. It's very like kitschy collectibles and pretty little things and crochet and those sort of things. And De Stijl and Art Deco is more like open floor plan apartments in New York City with square coffee tables and things like that. And you'll see in art history, and I've talked about this before, that they're often just being kind of like shady to each other back and forth. It's kind of a call and answer. So somebody comes up with a movement, and is saying like, this is how I think it should be done, and then you almost always have a response movement. So there's the call and response of like, no, I like, I think this, and it's kind of a tug of war, especially with arts and crafts. Okay, so here's an example of De Stijl. This is El Lissitzky's Beat the Whites with the Red Edge, or Red Wedge, sorry, 1919. The Bauhaus. Critical to the modern avant-garde meaning the new, the Bauhaus was a German school of arts and crafts founded in 1919. So they too felt the world should move in the direction of machine-made products. And I would say the Bauhaus felt especially strongly about machine-made. It's kind of an unusual and strange art movement in a lot of ways, because we often associate art. Most of us associate art with what we can make with our hands. The power of the creator. The art has been described sometimes as what separates us from the animal kingdom. Even though human beings are animals, we create in a way that is more conceptual than animals. Animals create to live and out of instinct, and humans create to make these new things and creative things and concepts. So the Bauhaus is unique in this way that it really was almost entirely about machine made. So founded by Walter Gropius, who felt the machine would be the salvation of humanity and wanted things to be, quote, in the style of today. The Bauhaus would design things, quote, totally in the style of today that looked, quote, absolutely new. Believed artists and craftspeople were entirely linked, and they were utmost concerned with architecture. So let's look at some examples of Bauhaus real quick, okay? This Bauhaus is kind of a difficult one to understand. Okay. So this is probably looking a little more familiar to you guys. You've probably, these chairs kind of remind me of something you may have seen in, a doctor's office or something like that, or dentist's office. This very modern style is prevalent still. So this is the Vosley chair by Marcel Breuer, so known as the Model B3 chair, was designed by Hungarian-born modernist architect and furniture designer Breuer between 1925 and 1926. Inspired to create the chair while riding his bicycle, he envisioned taking the tubular steel used for the handlebars and bending it into pieces of furniture. Breuer took the traditional form of an overstuffed chair and simplified it down until it was just an outline, with a canvas seat, back, and arms. The chair soon became known as the Vasily chair, named after Russian painter Vasily Kandinsky, Breuer's friend and fellow Bauhaus instructor, who praised the design when it was first introduced. So, so a lot of times I think people think of like these simplified forms and this modern style as kind of a cop-out and very simple. I've heard that a lot. But honestly, simple can be some of the most difficult or things to create. You can hide a lot of flaws, and I'll say personally, not that anybody asked, but in my personal opinion, I'm not actually a big fan of this. I'm more on the arts and crafts side, but I appreciate how difficult it is to make things simple and clean, because you can hide a lot of flaws. Let's say in a drawing with a lot of shading, and like impressive light and contrast, but you can't hide a lot of flaws in a clean, simple outline. All right, so this is Baby Cradle by Peter Keller. Notice the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. Kandinsky's work was the inspiration for German architect Peter Keller's Baby Cradle. So they were all about Kandinsky. So Keller was directly inspired by Kandinsky's book on color theory, which outlined his feelings about color and psychological effect on humans. Composed of simple shapes like triangles, rectangles, primary colors, cradle features a color block body in red and yellow with a blue circular rocker. A palette recognized as a trademark of the Bauhaus. So everything's simple. Reduce it all the way down to primary colors, right? I think this one's pretty neat. This is a chess set. All right. So I'm not going to read you guys every single description. This is in the slides if you want to learn more. There's a chair. I have actually sat in a chair like this. This is a style that I think is really endured, right? I've seen these chairs before, and I've sat in one. They're not fun. I feel like you kind of swing down a little. This is kind of a neat one. Tea Infuser by Marianne Brandt. Took the design of a conventional teapot and stripped it of any ornament to create her geometric metal tea infuser and strainer. All right. Oh, one of them didn't load. Oh well. So, Barcelona chair. You guys are getting the idea of this style, right? Geometric, simple, chrome, primary colors. Here's like an overall little visual they have on the website. So, that's the Bauhaus. All right. Not just a cool goth band. All right. Geometric versus organic. Innovation versus aesthetics. It is a fact of design history that organic design and geometric design were at war, and yet they flow into one another sometimes. So innovation was and is certainly necessary, but is it art? Do the artists of the arts and crafts movement have a point in that functionality does not have to replace aesthetic appeal? Is it an either or question in the first place? So that's something to think about, right? Is it even an either or question? I'd say in this case, I mean, a lot of times it is. It's not, right? A lot of times you can say, well, it depends on the situation. It doesn't have to be either or. In this situation, it kind of is because while they flow back and forth, they are very different, right? So a modernist look, simple, clean, and boxy looks very different than stained glass and paintings and flowers, and they're different looks. All right, contemporary design since 1980. Contrary to the way the wording sounds, contemporary in terms of art history began around 1960. And this is kind of a problem throughout all of art history, is that there's a constant need to name things the new, contemporary, and then at some point it becomes outdated and confusing. So contemporary art actually starts in 1960, and after that time, particularly after 1980, design companies began to realize that the war between organic, geometric, natural, and mechanical was rather silly. A plurality of styles became accepted in design, even in the same place at the same time. Companies began to realize that marketing to everyone at the same time was a poor strategy and embraced niche marketing. Um, so let's talk about niche marketing real quick. I even remember being a kid, and niche marketing was already a thing, but it wasn't as well done as it is now. Niche marketing now is crazy. It's so precise um, that I think sometimes even the companies who put things out underestimate it, right? Um, like there's a fan base for everything. And now, especially with the internet, you can pinpoint those things. Like I remember being a kid, and when a clothing style was popular or a hairstyle was popular, everyone had it, right? You were a big dork, like me. I mean, but people treated you that way if you didn't have the sneakers that everybody was wearing, the hair that everybody had, the clothes that everybody was wearing. It was Tommy Hilfiger was a big one when I was a kid. Mud jeans. I'm dating myself, I know, but if you didn't have those things, you weren't cool, right? And I think one of the neat things about today that I've noticed is that a plurality of styles is accepted, are accepted because we have so much in the way of niche marketing and it's so micromanaged that while we are somewhat being manipulated, if you look at this because it's really a better way to make money, it works out for us because we can find the things we want. I really appreciate that there are websites that cater to the offbeat things that I like. All right, so the computer revolution. Before the Apple computer comes into play in 1984, graphic designers utilized more traditional draftsmanship skills such as traditional drawings. Programs like Adobe Photoshop changed the game. Combined with scanning and printing, the ruler, the lightbox, the drafting table, they could all be replaced. Computer generated typeface can and at times does replace calligraphy skills. So, a lot of times now people have learned to manipulate typeface in Photoshop, and that's how you generally make type for a company. And the reason that it looks so cool and so nice is because it's generally heavily manipulated in Photoshop. You usually start with a base type and then you manipulate it into something unique. And that it's quicker and everything, and there's nothing wrong with it. I would say that the best outcomes really come from a combination of using programs like Photoshop and hand drawing. And still, you really, to me, you still need to know how to use rulers, light boxes, drafting tables, things like that. All right, so we're going to talk about Etsy as possibly part of the arts and crafts movement because this arts and crafts tug of war between that and more modern machine-made styles, I think it kind of is still going on. It's always been a back and forth. There's a little video here from, I think it's the Etsy CEO, if I remember correctly, kind of talking about that a little bit. And you guys are welcome to watch it again. I'm not going to play the videos in this recording. But what I would like you to think about, do you feel we are in a resurgence of the arts and crafts movement? Are companies like Etsy warring with Photoshop design mass production in the same sort of way? Is there a similarity? So this is going to go in your notebook, okay? This is going to go in your notebook. This is one of your questions for your journal, but I also want you to answer it on the discussion board, okay? Because it's kind of the main topic. It's what we would be discussing in class. So it's both going to go in your discussion board for this upcoming Monday, and it's also going to go in your journal. Okay, same question, and there'll be directions. I hope you're all staying safe. Please stay safe. Please stay inside as much as you can. If you haven't seen, and I'm sure you have by now, we're going to be online the rest of the semester, and that's all right. If you have any questions, there's a question board set up in Blackboard in the discussion board. There's a board for questions. Again, you can always email me. If you're really kind of having a lot of confusion, you can call me. Okay, just email me. I'll send you my phone number. We can talk. That way, sometimes you just need a discussion where you can ask quite a few questions. And I don't want anybody to be shy about that. I'm just in my house like you guys. So I hope you're all staying safe. I hope you're all well. And yeah, that's it for today, guys. See you in the Wednesday video.